I thought I knew him, my husband, my partner, my best friend, but beneath the surface of our perfect life hid secrets I never imagined. When those secrets surfaced, everything shattered. This story is about love's fragile illusions, betrayal that cuts deeper than any wound, and the hard path to reclaiming yourself from the ruins. If you've ever faced heartbreak that feels like the end of the world, this story is for you. Part 1, The Perfect Picture. I'll start writing Part 1 now and deliver it in full length. Ready? Here we go. Part 1, The Perfect Picture. I used to believe our life was a picture-perfect dream, a fairy tale made real, stitched together with laughter, promises, and the kind of love that seemed invincible. James was everything I ever wanted, charming, kind, and effortlessly attentive. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small but filled with joy, a celebration of two people convinced they were destined for forever. We moved into our cozy home on the edge of town, a place I decorated with soft colors and warm lights, imagining the life we'd build there, children's laughter, quiet evenings, and endless love. For years, everything felt steady. Our friends said we were the perfect couple. James's smile lit up every room. We talked about our future, plans for travel, dreams of family, the house we'd renovate someday. But beneath that smooth surface, tiny cracks began to appear, whispers of tension, unspoken words, late nights when James's phone was locked away from me. At first, I convinced myself it was just stress. Work was demanding for him. I was tired from juggling my own career and managing the home. Everyone has moments like that. But then, the little things started piling up. The unexplained absences, the late returns with vague excuses, a scent on his clothes I didn't recognize. My heart, desperate to hold on to the perfect picture, told me to ignore it, to trust him, to believe in us. I was wrong. The truth came crashing down on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I had planned a surprise for James, tickets to his favorite band's concert, something to remind us of the joy we once shared. I came home early from work, humming with excitement, keys jingling in my hand. But when I stepped inside, the silence was thick, too thick. The house smelled different, a strange mix of cologne and perfume. The living room light was dimmed, curtains drawn. Then, I heard voices. They weren't James's usual warm tones. They were hushed, secretive. I froze at the doorway, heart pounding. And then I saw her, a woman I didn't recognize, sitting close to James on our couch, her hand resting on his thigh. Time slowed. Every part of me shattered. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but I stayed rooted, tears burning my eyes. James looked up, his face paling when he saw me. The woman scrambled away, embarrassed and guilty. He tried to explain, stammering through lies and half-truths. But nothing could erase the image seared into my mind. That day, the perfect picture I had believed in was gone, smashed into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever put back together. Part 2, After the Fall. The silence after she left was louder than any scream. James stood there, awkwardly frozen, as I tried to gather what remained of my dignity. My hands were shaking, my breath shallow. But I didn't cry, not yet. Maybe I was too stunned. Maybe my body was protecting me from the impact, like a car crash victim who doesn't feel the broken bones until hours later. He said my name softly, like a prayer. Emma, wait. But I didn't want to hear him. I didn't want his words. I walked upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and collapsed on the floor beside our bed, the same bed we'd shared for years. The place where we laughed, whispered late-night dreams, and made promises he now trampled with every lie. I stayed there for hours, knees pulled to my chest. Somewhere below, I heard the front door close. I didn't know if he left or if she did. I didn't care. The next morning, I awoke on the floor with a stiffness in my back and a hole in my chest. My phone buzzed, messages from James. I'm so sorry, please talk to me. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I never stopped loving you. I wanted to scream. How dare he? How dare he act like it was a small thing? Like I could just erase the sight of him with another woman from my brain? But the worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself, it was the fact that I hadn't seen it coming. Or rather, that I had seen it coming and refused to believe it. And so I answered. Don't come home. He didn't reply. I went about my day like a ghost. I took a shower but didn't feel clean. I made coffee but didn't taste it. I stared at our wedding photo on the wall until I finally tore it down, glass shattering on the floor. The sound was too sharp, too final, and yet satisfying. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed with every light off, watching the shadows of headlights pass across the wall. Somewhere in the stillness, it hit me. I wasn't just mourning a betrayal, I was mourning the death of the life I thought I had. James eventually came home, quietly, as if hoping I wouldn't hear. I did. I listened to his footsteps pause outside the bedroom door. But he didn't knock. Maybe he knew I wouldn't answer. He slept on the couch. And in the morning, I found him there, still in his work clothes, dark circles under his eyes, as if the weight of what he'd done had finally begun to press on him. "Please talk to me," he said hoarsely. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Talk? You mean lie again?" "No," he said, "no more lies." And then he told me everything. Her name was Danielle. She was someone from work. It had started as harmless lunches, long talks during stressful days. She listened, he said. She made him feel important. One night, one mistake, turned into months of secrets. "Why didn't you just leave me?" I asked. "If you wanted someone else?" "I didn't want someone else," he said, and for a moment, I almost believed the tears in his eyes. I got lost. But people don't get lost into someone else's bed over and over again. I packed a bag that afternoon. I didn't tell him where I was going. I just needed air. I stayed at my sister's place, where she offered me warm tea and a silent hug that said more than any words could. I didn't talk much. I didn't cry either. The pain was still too raw, too jagged. I couldn't form words around it yet. It wasn't until 3 days later, lying in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, that I felt the first tear slide down my cheek, then another, and another, until the sobs came so hard I couldn't breathe. It was like a dam breaking, and everything I had held back, the fear, the grief, the humiliation, poured out of me. I wasn't just mourning the betrayal. I was mourning the Emma who used to believe in forever, the Emma who trusted without question, the Emma who believed love meant safety. She was gone now, and in her place stood a woman who didn't know who she was anymore. Part 3, Shattered Glass and Ghosts of Us. My sister, Claire, had always been the stronger one between us. Not because she didn't cry, but because she knew when to. She didn't flinch away from pain. She let it pass through her, burn her, mark her. Then she stood up and kept going. That morning, after I finally broke down, she came into the room quietly, sat on the edge of the bed, and took my hand. "Is this the first time he's hurt you?" she asked softly. I blinked at her through swollen eyes, confused. "What do you mean?" Claire tilted her head gently. "Not physically. I mean, the first time he's made you feel small, unloved." That question hit harder than I expected, because when I really thought about it, deeply, honestly, the answer was no. James had hurt me before, subtly, quietly, in the kind of ways that are hard to describe without sounding like you're making a big deal out of nothing. The time he dismissed my promotion like it was a fluke. The times he said I was too sensitive or too emotional. The way he always needed space when I was at my lowest. The times I cried in the shower because I didn't want to burden him. It hadn't felt like abuse. It had felt like marriage, the hard parts, the compromises. I'd convinced myself that was just how love worked. But now I was starting to see it differently. Maybe this betrayal was just the final blow. Maybe I'd been bleeding from 1,000 cuts for years and never noticed. That realization terrified me more than the cheating itself. 2 weeks passed. I stayed at Claire's. James called a few times, left voicemails, sent texts that started out remorseful, then turned desperate. "You're my everything. Please come home. I'll do anything to fix this. I'm starting therapy. I want to be better, for us. Please don't give up on me." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to talk, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had too much. Rage, grief, confusion, they all lived in my throat, crowding each other out. I started journaling. I wrote pages and pages about our history, the good and the bad. I tried to remember the first time I felt truly loved by him, and then, the first time I felt completely alone while still in his arms. Writing helped. It was the only thing that didn't lie to me. One night, I went back to the house while James was at work. I needed clothes, papers, and some of the things I couldn't live without. Walking inside felt like stepping into a museum of a life that no longer existed. The photos on the wall, smiling, happy versions of us. The candle I'd left half burned on the kitchen counter. The book on my nightstand with my bookmark still tucked in, frozen in time. I found a note in his handwriting on the kitchen table. Just one word. Please. I didn't take it. Instead, I walked into the bedroom, our bedroom, and opened the drawer where I kept letters and cards he'd written me over the years. Anniversary notes, birthday messages, silly post-its left on the fridge. As I read them, a strange mix of warmth and nausea filled my chest. His words once made me feel adored. Now they felt like a con, a beautifully wrapped lie. But what stopped me cold wasn't in the drawer. It was behind a stack of books in the closet, a small envelope with a name I didn't recognize. Marissa. I hesitated, opened it. Inside were photos. A woman in a red dress, smiling up at James. Candid pictures, at dinner, in a hotel room, kissing on a balcony. This wasn't Danielle from the couch. This was someone else. Someone older, more elegant, dated. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a one-time affair. This wasn't just one mistake with one coworker during a rough patch. This was a pattern. A history I'd never known existed. And suddenly, everything began to feel like a lie. I left the house that night with the envelope pressed against my chest, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. Claire didn't ask questions when I came back and handed her the photos. She just looked at me and said, "You didn't do this to yourself, Emma. Don't carry shame that doesn't belong to you." But I did carry it, and I hated that I did. Because love, when it's real, makes you want to believe, even when all the evidence says you shouldn't. Part 4, The Second Betrayal. I didn't sleep that night. The envelope sat on my lap as I sat by the window in Claire's guest room, staring out at the quiet street, watching porch lights flicker off one by one. The photos felt heavier than they should have, like each one carried its own piece of truth I wasn't ready to hold. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to his office, slam the pictures on his desk, and watch his face crumble under the weight of guilt. But I didn't. I was too tired of being the one who reacted. For once, I wanted control. So, I waited until morning. I dressed in silence, pulled my hair back like armor, and walked out the door with the manila envelope clutched in my hands. Claire didn't stop me. She just hugged me and said, "Take your power back." James was home. His car was in the driveway, and I felt my stomach twist as I parked beside it. I half hoped he wouldn't answer the door, but he did. He looked like hell, eyes bloodshot, stubble on his jaw, shirt wrinkled. I wondered if he was trying to look pitiful or if it was just who he'd become. He opened the door slowly, like he didn't trust what was behind it. "Emma." I pushed past him without a word and walked straight to the kitchen table. The same table where we'd celebrated anniversaries and fought over bills and shared bowls of pasta. I dropped the envelope on it. "Open it." He stared at it, then back at me, confused. "What is this?" "Open it," I repeated. He did, slowly. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out the photos. His breath caught, then left him entirely. "Who is she?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer didn't matter. He sat down heavily. "Emma, that was years ago. It was over long before." "Before Danielle?" I snapped. "Before the affair I did know about? So let me get this straight, you didn't just cheat. You're a serial liar." "I didn't love her," he said, his voice cracking. "It was complicated." "No, James, it was cowardly." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "I need you to tell me everything, right now. Because if I find out one more thing on my own, I swear to God, you won't hear from me again, ever." He was silent for a long time. And then he broke. It spilled out of him like a confession under interrogation. Marissa was a client he'd met 3 years ago. It had started during a rough patch. "We weren't connecting," he said, as if that excused it. "The affair had lasted a few months. He ended it when he felt too guilty, afraid I might find out. Then there was someone else. A bartender from his business trip last spring. Just one night, he claimed. And Danielle? That was just the latest. The one that broke the dam. 3 women, 3 betrayals, and who knew how many more. I sat down across from him, numb. I loved you, I said quietly. I gave you everything, and you gave me this. He buried his face in his hands. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to tell you I was broken. I stared at him for a long time. You weren't broken, I said coldly. You were selfish, and I let you be. I gave you the benefit of the doubt every time you made me feel like I was asking too much. I thought I was hard to love, but now I see you didn't even try. He didn't fight me. Maybe he knew he couldn't. I'll leave, he whispered. If that's what you want, I won't contest anything. But I didn't want his quiet guilt. I didn't want his tired apologies. I wanted the version of him I thought I married, but he didn't exist. So I stood up. You already left, James. Every time you chose someone else, you left me. I moved back into the house 2 days later, not because I forgave him, but because I refused to let him ruin every memory tied to it. It was my home too. I told him to leave, and he did, without protest. The silence that followed was different this time. It wasn't heavy with questions. It was filled with clarity. I began to rearrange things, physically and emotionally. I got rid of our bed, threw out the sheets, took down every photo of us and replaced them with pictures of my family, my friends, even myself. One day, I stood in front of the mirror, truly looked at myself, and whispered, "You're not weak. You just believed in the wrong person." I believed in me now. Part 5, The Ghosts That Stayed. It's strange how quiet the house felt without James in it. The silence was no longer a waiting room for confrontation, it was a vacuum, holding echoes of a life I once believed was perfect. Every corner of the house seemed to whisper reminders: the squeaky stair he always skipped, the drawer that held his favorite coffee mug, the empty space on the left side of the bed. But I didn't run from it. Not anymore. Instead, I started reclaiming it room by room, drawer by drawer. I donated half the closet. I burned the love letters he'd written me over the years, every forever that turned into a lie. I painted over the gray bedroom walls and chose a shade of pale gold. Not because it was trendy, but because it felt like sunlight. Warm. Alive. It wasn't about forgetting. It was about making space. Claire came by often, offering everything from wine nights to impromptu road trips. She was a lifeline, not because she always knew what to say, but because she let me feel it all without flinching. "I don't get it," I told her one night, curled up on the couch, nursing a glass of Pinot Noir. "How can someone fake love that well?" For years? Claire didn't answer right away. She reached for my hand and gave it a squeeze. "I don't think they fake it, Em," she said softly. "I think they love as much as they're capable of. And sometimes, that's just not enough." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't that James didn't love me. Maybe he did, in the only way he knew how. But his love was stitched with weakness, stitched with cracks that split wider every time things got hard. And me? I spent years patching over those cracks with blind faith. That night, I opened my old journals. I flipped through entries going back 10 years, little scribbles from our early days, wedding plans, fears about his long work hours, the time he forgot our anniversary and said, "Things have just been crazy." I saw the pattern now. The small dismissals, the casual neglect, the emotional distance I'd excused because I believed it was temporary. It wasn't. The betrayal didn't start with a kiss. It started with silence. With indifference. With absence wrapped in polite smiles. And I let it grow. A week later, I got a message that stopped me cold. It was from Marissa. Yes, that Marissa. The first affair I hadn't known about until the photos surfaced. Her message was short. "I know you probably hate me. But I think you deserve the truth. If you're willing to talk, I'll answer anything." My hands trembled over the keyboard. Every instinct told me to block her, to delete the message and preserve what little peace I'd managed to find. But a deeper part of me, the part that needed to understand, whispered, "Ask." So I replied. And we met. Not in secret, not in anger, just two women tangled in the same web, on different ends of the thread. She was younger than me, striking in a glossy magazine kind of way, but there was no smugness in her demeanor. Just guilt. Heavy and honest. "I didn't know he was married at first," she said. "He said he was separated, that it was complicated. By the time I found out the truth, I was already in too deep." I watched her closely. Her eyes didn't dart. Her hands fidgeted, but her voice didn't tremble. "I ended it. I told him I couldn't live like that." "And you know what he said?" She looked up at me. "He said he'd fix it. That he just needed time. That you didn't understand him." I closed my eyes for a moment. He'd said the same thing about her. And about Danielle. He recycled his excuses like old scripts, feeding each woman the same lines and watching us all fall for them, one by one. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that. Instead, I thanked her. Not because she deserved it, but because I did. Because in hearing her story, I finally understood it had never been about me not being enough. It was about him never being whole. That night, I stood in the bathroom and looked at my reflection. Not to criticize or question, but to acknowledge. I saw the woman James broke. But more importantly, I saw the woman he couldn't destroy. Not completely. Not forever. I pulled out my phone, opened a blank document, and typed. "This is how it ends, not with forgiveness, not with revenge, but with freedom." Because I was done grieving the man who never existed. And I was ready to meet the woman I was becoming. Part 6, The Face of the Enemy. There's a unique kind of anger that simmers after the tears dry, not explosive, not dramatic, but steady, controlled, focused. That's the place I had finally reached. Not rage, not vengeance, just a firm, quiet resolve to stop being the victim in a story I didn't ask to be written into. So when I ran into Danielle, entirely by accident, in the coffee shop 2 blocks from my office, I didn't flinch. She saw me before I saw her, froze mid-sip of her latte, those wide, startled eyes locking with mine like a deer spotting headlights. I walked straight toward her table. "Emma," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. "You have 2 minutes," I said, calmly. "Use them wisely." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked around like she wanted to vanish into the wallpaper. But I wasn't going to let her disappear, not before I had my answers. "I didn't plan for it to happen," she blurted out. It started as talking. "He was hurting. I was hurting. You know I've been alone for so long." "Stop." I held up a hand. "This isn't confession. I'm not your priest." Her lip quivered. "Good. Let it shake. Let her feel even a sliver of what I'd swallowed for months." "Was it worth it?" I asked. "Throwing away 20 years of friendship? Lying to my face every time you stepped into my house? Every dinner? Every birthday party?" "I didn't want to fall for him," she whispered. "But I did." I laughed. It wasn't joyful. It was bitter. Flat. Cracked down the middle. "You didn't fall for him," I said. "You fell for the part of him that mirrored your own emptiness. You fed each other's shadows." That struck her. She sat back, stunned into silence. I could have walked away then, maybe I should have, but there was one more thing I needed to say. "You know what hurts the most?" I asked, my voice lower now. "It's not even the cheating. It's the betrayal of memory. You knew me before he did. You were there through every heartbreak, every insecurity, and still, you chose him. You chose secrecy. You chose the easy lie over the hard truth." Tears were slipping down her cheeks now, but I felt nothing. Not pity, not rage, just release. I turned to leave. But I paused one last time. "Whatever you think you gained, you didn't. You just made room for regret." And I walked out. I didn't call James to tell him about the confrontation. I didn't need to. He didn't deserve my insight or my anger anymore. I owed him nothing, not even the satisfaction of my rage. The silence was louder than any shouting match could have been. But still, the past had claws, and some nights, it scratched. One evening, I got a message from James. Not an apology, not a plea, just this. "I missed the sound of you laughing in the kitchen. I never told you, but that sound, it was home." I stared at the words for a long time. And then I deleted them. That kitchen was mine now. And my laughter, when it came again, would be mine, too. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. Slowly, I started to feel human again, not just a body going through the motions. I went back to yoga. I booked a solo weekend trip to the coast. I wrote. Pages and pages of emotion poured out of me, not for anyone else, but just to remind myself I could still create something from the wreckage. Claire invited me to a gallery opening downtown. I almost said no, but something nudged me to go. And there, among the canvases and soft jazz, I met someone new. His name was Marcus. He wasn't flashy. He didn't flood me with compliments or lean in too quickly, but he listened, really listened. We talked about art, about music, about the messy beauty of starting over. And when he asked to walk me to my car at the end of the night, I let him. He didn't try to kiss me, just stood beside me and said, "I hope we do this again." For the first time in a long time, I smiled without guilt, without fear. Because I was finally beginning to believe it. I would do this again. Not the betrayal, but the healing. The risking. The living. Part 7, Ghosts of the Past. The first time I heard his voice again, really heard it. Not on a voicemail, not in a text, but in person. It felt like my body forgot how to breathe. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. I had just left the bookstore, carrying a small stack of novels and a cinnamon latte I didn't really need. I turned the corner to my car, and there he was. James. He hadn't changed much, same storm gray coat, same tired blue eyes. But something was different, something hollowed out. There was an edge to him now, or maybe I had just sharpened my own. "Emma," he said softly, voice almost drowned out by the rain. I didn't answer, just kept walking toward my car. "I just need 5 minutes," he added quickly, stepping in front of me. "Please." I stared at him. For a moment, I considered telling him to go to hell, but I didn't, not because I owed him anything, but because I wanted to see what he would say, what story he would tell now that everything had collapsed. I nodded once. We stood under the small overhang beside the bakery. The world moved around us in blurred outlines, umbrellas, hurried steps, city noise muffled by drizzle, but we were still. "I messed up," he started. "I know that doesn't even begin to cover it, but I need you to know that." I stayed silent. "She's gone," he said after a pause. "Danielle. She left a few weeks ago, said she couldn't live with what we did. She moved back to Chicago." I blinked. The name hit me like a dull thud, not painful anymore, just a memory of pain. "And?" I asked finally. "And I haven't stopped thinking about you, about what I threw away." His words were fragile, careful, like he knew the ground beneath him could give way at any second. "You didn't just throw away me," I said. "You threw away our life, our trust, our history." "I know, God, I know." He ran a hand through his hair, water dripping down his wrist. "But I want to make it right, somehow." I let out a slow breath. It almost sounded like a laugh, but there was no joy in it. "You want to fix this?" I asked, stepping closer. "With what, James? Apologies? Empty promises? Flowers and dinner dates like we can tape over the cracks and pretend the foundation isn't rotted?" "I'm willing to do anything," he said, desperate now. "Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. Just give me a chance to earn your forgiveness." "You had your chance," I replied. "You had 100 chances." He looked like he'd been punched, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. "I begged you, remember? I told you I felt something was wrong, that you were pulling away, and you lied. Again and again. You gaslit me into silence, into doubt. I thought I was losing my mind. I hated myself for months because of what you made me feel." "I was scared," he whispered. "No, you were selfish," I snapped. "You wanted both. You wanted comfort and excitement. You wanted loyalty from me while you gave your body to someone else." The silence that followed was heavy. And then, finally, I said the thing I had carried like a stone in my chest for months. "I'm not angry because you stopped loving me," I said. "I'm angry because when you stopped, you didn't tell me. You let me keep giving you everything while you gave me nothing." He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "I'm healing now," I said. "Really healing. And it's not because of you. It's because I finally stopped waiting for you to fix what you broke." His lips trembled. "I still love you," he whispered. I know, I said, but I don't love the man you became. That was the end. Not with a scream, not with a door slam, but with quiet finality. I got in my car and left him standing in the rain, exactly where he deserved to be, alone, soaked in regret, a ghost of the life he destroyed. That night, I wrote a letter, not to send, not to show, just to write. To the version of me that believed love meant sacrifice, I'm sorry. You deserved better. You are better. And you're going to be okay. I folded it and tucked it into a book. For once, I didn't cry. I just slept deeply, peacefully, knowing that closure didn't always come wrapped in clarity. Sometimes, it was simply the courage to walk away. Part 8, The Woman I Became. It's strange how life quietly rearranges itself after everything breaks. The routines come back first. Mornings with coffee and soft music, walks through the park, grocery lists. Then the silence becomes comforting instead of oppressive. The home that once echoed with arguments and unspoken pain begins to feel like mine. Not ours, just mine. And slowly, piece by piece, I begin to reclaim myself. It didn't happen overnight. Healing rarely does. There were nights when I reached for the side of the bed out of habit. Mornings when I'd pour 2 cups of coffee before realizing I didn't need to. Times I'd catch my reflection and wonder who the hell I was without him, without them. The version of me who once lived for others had to die. I mourned her, and then, I buried her with grace. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. Joined a yoga class. Took a solo trip to Asheville just because I'd always wanted to see the Blue Ridge Mountains in autumn. I dyed my hair a shade darker, bought new bed sheets, rearranged the furniture. Little rebellions that whispered, I am still here. One day, I walked past a mirror and saw someone I almost didn't recognize. But not in a bad way. I saw strength in my shoulders, calm in my eyes. A woman who had been dragged through hell and didn't just survive, she rebuilt. Not from ashes, but from truth. The funny thing is, I never once thought I'd be better without James. I didn't leave to become stronger. I left because staying meant disappearing. I left because the moment you realize someone sees your love as disposable, you have to choose yourself even if your voice shakes when you do it. And I did. 1 year after I walked in on his betrayal, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Not from him, from Danielle's younger sister. A spring ceremony, pastel theme, family welcome. I smiled. A real smile. It didn't hurt anymore. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I'd forgiven myself. For trusting the wrong people, for ignoring the signs, for loving blindly, for staying too long, for leaving too late. I kept the invitation, not to attend, but as a reminder that some stories aren't meant to be rewritten, only learned from. I wrote a letter to myself again. To the woman who thought breaking meant ending, it didn't, it meant beginning. This is not the life you planned. It's better. A few months later, I met someone. Not in a movie scene way, not with a dramatic spark or fate-drenched moment, just a quiet connection. He was gentle, patient. We talked about books, not trauma, dreams, not damage. There were no promises, no declarations, just space to breathe. He asked me once, early on, what do you want from love? And I told him honestly, peace, respect, presence. Someone who stays not because they need me, but because they see me. He didn't flinch, he just nodded and said, you deserve that. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. If you're reading this, maybe you've been there too. Maybe you know what it feels like to lose the people you trusted most, to sit in the ruins of something that once felt sacred and wonder how to start again. So let me say this, you will. Not because time heals all wounds, it doesn't. Some scars will always sting when touched. But you'll heal because you decide to. Because you stop asking why and start asking what's next. Because eventually, you'll look at the wreckage and think, I survived this, and I am still worthy of love, especially my own. This story started with betrayal, with a woman left in the dark by the 2 people she trusted most. But it ends with her, standing in the light. Not waiting to be chosen. Choosing herself.